Good evening, friends. Settle in for a quiet night together. If you can dim your lights, let the room grow still. Maybe you're already beneath your blanket, or you're simply lying there, eyes heavy, waiting for the world to soften. Tonight, we'll wander far from the noise of now. We'll drift back to the medieval world, to the hum of markets, the whisper of candle flames, the echo of wooden sandals on stone. And as we travel, we'll uncover a secret that history rarely told us in detail: how people truly lived, bathed, and smelled in the Dark Ages. So take a slow breath in and out. And if this calm journey helps you unwind, maybe tap like or subscribe, only if it feels right. Because tonight, this story belongs to quiet minds and gentle curiosity. Imagine it. The year is 1350. A cool mist curls around the rooftops of a small town somewhere in medieval France. The sun has just slipped behind the hills, and smoke drifts from 100 chimneys, carrying the scent of burning oak and something faintly sweet, honey, perhaps, or the last bits of bread crisping over the fire. In a narrow street lined with timbered houses, a woman empties a bucket into the gutter. The sound splashes and runs down toward the river. Someone nearby coughs. A dog shakes the rain from its fur, and you, unseen, stand at the corner, quietly watching. It's not dirty in the way you might imagine. Not a sea of filth, but rather a living place. Wet stone, damp wool, smoke, herbs. The scent of the ages, dense and earthy. You see, in the Middle Ages, people didn't think of hygiene the way we do now. Soap was precious. Water could be risky, and yet they weren't entirely unclean. They had their rhythms, their scents, their little rituals that kept them feeling, well, human. Let me tell you about the baths first, the public ones. If you wandered into a medieval town, you might find a stew, as they called it. Not the food kind, though sometimes the smell wasn't so far off. These were bathhouses, warm, smoky rooms filled with the hum of conversation and the splash of water. Candles flickered in corners. Wooden tubs steamed. People came here to wash, to gossip, to eat, sometimes even to fall in love. The water was scented with herbs, rosemary, sage, or lavender if you were lucky. Imagine the feeling of slipping into that wooden tub after a long day walking through muddy streets in heavy boots. The heat would seep into your bones. Someone might pour a jug of warm water over your shoulders. Maybe there's a bit of laughter from across the room, the clink of a cup of wine. It's all surprisingly cozy. But the truth is that comfort didn't last. By the late 14th century, fear crept in. The plague had swept through Europe, the Black Death, and people began to whisper that baths might open the pores to illness. Warm water, they said, invited sickness inside. So the bathhouses fell quiet. Doors closed. Steam faded into silence. And suddenly, a whole civilization had to rethink cleanliness. You can picture it. A merchant staring at his reflection in a small, uneven mirror, the kind made from polished bronze, rubbing a bit of vinegar on his face to disinfect it. A noblewoman sprinkling rosewater on her neck and wrists instead of washing. A monk carefully shaving his tonsure in cold water, the blade scraping softly while a candle flickers nearby. If you lean close, you might hear the rhythm of their mornings. A splash of water from a basin, a quick rinse of hands. A prayer whispered as the day begins. It wasn't laziness. It was belief, a whole philosophy built around balance. To them, too much water could upset the body's humors. The delicate mix of blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile that defined medieval medicine. Stay dry, stay balanced. And yet, there's a kind of charm in it, isn't there? Even in their misunderstanding, they found ways to care. They washed their hands before meals, wiped their faces with linen cloths scented with herbs, and cleaned their teeth with twigs of mint and sage. Picture that. Someone in 1200 AD, leaning over a wooden bowl, chewing a mint twig, humming softly. A medieval toothbrush, if you like. They'd rub ashes into their hair to absorb oils, or comb it with fine bone combs carved by hand. Fleas were an endless battle, of course, but the combing itself, the slow pull of bone teeth through strands of hair, must have been oddly calming. In the castles, things smelled different. Not cleaner exactly, but heavier. beeswax candles instead of tallow, perfumed gloves, sheets washed in lavender water. You might walk into a noble's chamber and smell a mix of rose oil with smoke and damp stone. A tapestry hangs on the wall, thick with dust but beautiful. And below, in the kitchens or the servants' quarters, the air changes: garlic, bread, sweat, and stew. Life itself. Let's take a little walk, shall we? Close your eyes and imagine stepping through that castle. Your feet make soft echoes on the flagstone. Somewhere a lute is playing. The smell of meat roasting drifts up the stairs. You pass a servant carrying a bucket, water sloshing against the rim. He nods politely, a little shy. You ask where the bath is, and he laughs gently. Bath, my lord? Not tonight, but I can fetch the basin. You follow him into a small side room. No grand tub, just a wide wooden bowl set on a stand. A jug of water beside it, lukewarm at best. A folded cloth. A bar of soap the color of olive skin, hard, a little gritty. This, he tells you, is Castile soap made from olive oil. Imported from Spain, if you can believe it. A luxury. You dip your hands into the basin, and the water feels cool. You bring it to your face, the scent faintly earthy. The soap lathers poorly, but it's enough. For a moment, you feel the same small relief they did, a hint of freshness in a heavy world. When you finish, the servant pours the used water onto the straw outside. He doesn't seem to mind. The night air is thick with the scent of rain and livestock. He stretches his back, smiles, and says, "A clean face," they say, "keeps the devil away." You can almost believe him. The next morning, the town wakes slowly. Carts creak. A rooster calls. Someone hammers metal in the distance. A blacksmith shaping a hinge or a horseshoe. Children run past with bits of bread in their hands. You pass a baker's window, and the smell, oh, the smell, is heavenly. Yeast, smoke, and the faintest note of sweetness. Bread in the medieval world was everything. Currency, comfort, and sometimes even a way to measure time. And as people eat, they do what we all do after a good meal: they clean their hands. Not with napkins, but with bread crusts. Imagine tearing off a hard-end piece, wiping the grease from your fingers, and then tossing it to the dogs waiting by the door. A kind of medieval paper towel, if you will. The idea of hygiene wasn't about killing germs. It was about balance, odor, and appearance. Smelling nice meant you were well. Smelling bad meant something inside was wrong. So perfume wasn't vanity, it was medicine. You can almost see a physician mixing rose petals and alcohol in a small vial, whispering Latin under his breath. "This," he says, "will protect you from miasma, the bad air." He gives it to a lady, who dabs a bit behind her ears, believing it keeps the plague away. There's something tender in that gesture. A quiet hope in the middle of fear. Outside, life continues. The town fountain bubbles. Pigeons gather around it. People fill their jugs, wash their hands, even splash their faces despite the warnings. The water is cold, but it feels good. Children laugh. In truth, medieval people loved cleanliness as much as we do. They just understood it differently. To them, a clean soul mattered more than a clean skin. But still, they tried. They combed, they scented, they prayed. Sometimes, a monk might walk past with a faint smell of beeswax and ink. He's been copying texts all day, his fingers stained from the ink pot. He pauses, looks at the fountain, and dips his hand in. Not to wash, but to feel, to remind himself the world still flows. And maybe, for a moment, he smiles. There's a legend, that even King Louis IX, St. Louis, built public baths in Paris because he believed cleanliness was next to godliness. That was in the 1200s, long before the plague turned people fearful again. For a while, those baths were full every evening, steam rising like halos into the winter air. Imagine it. Hundreds of candles reflected in rippling water, laughter echoing through the stone vaults, the warmth of shared humanity. A medieval spa night, if you will. Then silence. Centuries later, the pipes are dry, the walls crumble, and only stories remain. Isn't it strange how something as small as washing can tell us everything about a civilization? Their fears, their hopes, their dreams of being pure. not just in body, but in spirit. As night deepens in our story, you can picture a narrow street again. The torches are dimming. Someone sings softly from a window. The stars above are faint, blurred by wood smoke. The world sleeps, wrapped in its own imperfect cleanliness. And as we leave that quiet town behind, let your mind wander further, beyond the castles and cobblestones, to the places where water ran freely, and the air was filled with the scent of herbs. Because next, we'll drift to the monasteries, where silence, soap, and scripture lived side by side. Take one more slow breath, in and out. Let the sound of medieval bells fade into the distance. Somewhere on the edge of town, past the low walls where ivy curls and goats wander, a small cottage stands by a brook. The water there is clearer than in the streets, fed by a spring that whispers beneath moss and stone. Every morning, before dawn, a woman named Isolde steps out with a wooden bucket. The air is cold enough to sting her cheeks, and mist curls from her breath. She crouches by the brook, dips the bucket, and watches the ripples spread. A frog plops away. She doesn't hurry. No one in her world hurries at this hour. When the bucket is full, she wipes her hands on her apron and listens to the hush of early light. Roosters somewhere, a wheel creaking, the faint thud of bread dough being kneaded in a neighbor's kitchen. Inside her cottage, the hearth smolders. She pours a bit of the new water into a pot and sets it near the coals. The smell of wet wood rises. Soon she'll steep a handful of thyme leaves in it. That's her morning wash. A cloth dipped in warm thyme water, wrung carefully, then passed across her face and neck. The scent is sharp, clean, almost peppery. She hums while she works, and the steam clouds the small window. It isn't glamour, it's rhythm, a small ritual against the weight of mud and smoke. Across Europe, similar rituals played out in countless cottages. Every region had its favored herb. Mint in the south, rosemary by the sea, sweet flag in the north. The plants changed, but the motion stayed the same. The gentle wipe of cloth, the breath of heat, the sigh that followed. Centuries later, when historians talk of the unwashed Middle Ages, they forget these tiny gestures, these moments of quiet care. Imagine the sound. Cloth against skin, fire crackling, sparrows outside. That's the heartbeat of daily hygiene. By midday, the town stirs to life. Merchants open shutters, and the market square fills with color. Faded red fabrics, barrels of salted fish, baskets of onions. The smell is both appetizing and alarming. People have lived too close for too long, and yet they laugh, argue, trade coins that bear the faint tang of metal and sweat. A man at one stall sells fresh water from a spring 2 miles away. Costs more than ale. He swears it's pure, untouched by the city drains. You watch as a customer sniffs it skeptically, shrugs, and pays anyway. In an age without plumbing, trust is currency. Nearby, another merchant sells toilet waters, perfumes distilled from rose or musk. A lady's maid leans close, inhaling deeply. For a second, she closes her eyes, lost in that illusion of purity. Then she walks away smiling, clutching the small glass vial as if it were holy. Perfume was protection in those days. People truly believed scent could guard the soul. They carried pomanders, small silver spheres filled with spices, on chains at their belts. When they passed a foul odor, they held the pomander to their nose, breathing through it like a charm. The logic wasn't wrong, just misplaced. They sensed that air carried danger. They simply didn't know the form it took. If you pause here, you can almost hear the soft clink of those silver balls as people walk by. It's strangely soothing, like wind chimes in the dark. As evening returns, the city exhales. Torches bloom along the main road, each haloed in smoke. Somewhere, water spills from a barrel into a trough, and the sound becomes a rhythm, steady and hypnotic. A cat slips across the stones. Let's follow it. It winds toward the river, where the laundresses gather. They are strong women, arms bare even in cold weather, skirts pinned high. They work by torchlight, beating cloth against smooth boards. The slap, slap, slap echoes like a heartbeat over the water. Their laughter rises and falls. Soap is scarce, so they make their own. Animal fat mixed with ash and rainwater, boiled until it thickens. The smell is not pleasant, but they're used to it. One of them, a red-haired girl barely 20, hums a love song while she works. The river takes the sound and carries it downstream. You might think of the river as dirty, but in that age it was also alive, a moving partner in survival. Everything flowed through it. Washing, drinking, blessings, curses. And always, it returned, patient and unbothered. Even now, if you close your eyes, you can picture that water shimmering with torchlight, rippling under stars. A dog barks once, twice. The women pack their bundles and head home, leaving only steam and scent behind. The night grows still again. Inside the walls of a nearby monastery, another rhythm beats. The monks rise before dawn, hours before any townsperson, and their first task is purification. They move through stone corridors barefoot, robes whispering. Each pauses at a basin of cold water, dips his fingers, and traces the sign of the cross across his chest. The chill wakes the body, steadies the mind. To them, cleanliness is prayer. Dirt is distraction. Their soap is simple lard and lime, but their dedication makes it sacred. You can almost smell it. Faintly smoky, faintly sweet, mixed with the incense from morning mass. Their routine never changes. Work, wash, pray, copy manuscripts, wash again. The repetition is hypnotic, like breathing itself. Perhaps that's why monasteries often felt cleaner, quieter, calmer than the world outside. They lived by rhythm, and rhythm keeps order even when reason falters. Later centuries would rediscover that idea and call it routine. But here, in the dark age of faith and fear, it already existed in those echoing halls. Picture a monk pausing at the well, bucket in hand. The water glints blue in moonlight. He looks up at the stars and whispers a psalm about purity. Then he drinks. The act is so small it almost disappears into the night, but it's the foundation of every modern habit we have. Down in the village, meanwhile, life is less orderly. Children play in mud. Pigs roam freely. And yet, there are rules. Town charters often banned dumping waste in the main streets. Violators paid fines. In London, by 1340, there were even designated gong farmers, people hired to empty latrines and carry the waste outside the walls. Imagine that job. Paid well, but best avoided at parties. The gong farmers worked at night, when the air was cooler and fewer noses were offended. They moved silently through alleys, lanterns bobbing, carts creaking. If you were awake, you might see them pass and smell the sharp tang of ammonia and straw. Unpleasant, yes, but necessary. Civilization survives on the backs of the unglamorous. One of them might hum to himself, half asleep, wheels turning under the stars. The rhythm of labor becomes lullaby. And somewhere above him, in a shuttered window, a child stirs, hears that sound, and drifts back to sleep. Even filth, when routine, can be strangely comforting. Let's linger there a moment longer. Listen to the night breathe. Listen to the gentle drip of water from eaves. Imagine the scent, a blend of smoke, damp earth, and something metallic from the river. The air itself feels thick, tangible, full of history. When dawn comes, mist hugs the ground. You wake in a small inn, the kind travelers use on the road between towns. The straw mattress is lumpy but warm. Downstairs, someone stirs the hearth. You hear the scrape of poker against ash. The innkeeper's wife brings a basin and sets it by your bed. For washing, she murmurs. The water is barely tepid, but you smile anyway. She leaves a sprig of lavender floating on top, a small grace. You wash your hands and face, feel the rough linen towel, smell the lavender. For a brief second, time blurs. You could be anywhere, any century. Cleanliness feels eternal, doesn't it? The same sigh of relief, the same soft gratitude. Later, on the road, you meet a group of pilgrims heading toward a distant shrine. Their feet are dusty, their cloaks stiff with travel. But at each river crossing they stop, remove their shoes and wade in. They wash their hands, their faces, sometimes their whole bodies if the weather allows. They believe that each cleansing absolves not just dirt, but sin. You watch the sunlight glitter on the surface and think, maybe they're right in some quiet way. By evening, campfires bloom along the road. Someone roasts onions on a stick. Another tells a joke about knights who bathe once a year whether they need it or not. Laughter rolls through the fields. The smell of onions mingles with smoke. The world feels simple again. Somewhere beyond those fields lies a castle, and inside, a noblewoman prepares for bed. Her maid brushes her hair. 100 strokes, counted softly in the candlelight. Each stroke releases a faint scent of oil and lavender. The brush is made of boar bristles set into polished wood. She closes her eyes and lets the rhythm lull her. Cleanliness, for her, is luxury, but also tenderness. The maid hums an old lullaby from her village, and for a moment, mistress and servant share the same calm silence. Outside, owls call. The castle walls breathe warmth into the night. Somewhere, the laundry still hangs, stiff in the cool air. Tomorrow, it will smell of smoke and sky, better than any perfume. When dawn arrives again, the cycle repeats. The world of medieval hygiene isn't one of filth or of purity. It's of rhythm. Wash a little, scent a little, endure a little. That rhythm kept humanity moving through centuries of mud and miracle. If you listen closely, you can still hear it in your own routine. The morning shower, the fresh shirt, the clean sheets at night. Echoes of hands dipping into basins hundreds of years ago. And now, as this chapter closes, picture yourself walking once more through that medieval town. The streets are empty, the air cool, the scent of bread lingers. You pass the fountain. Its water catches the first light. Someone opens a shutter above you, yawns, and wishes the world a clean new day. You smile, take one last breath of that smoky, herbal air, and step quietly onward, because the story continues. And as we leave behind the baths, the cottages, and the quiet streams, we move toward a place of discipline and devotion, where cleanliness became sacred duty. Now let your eyes grow heavier, let the sound of the river fade, and drift with me into the next part of our journey. The night is soft and silver when we arrive at the monastery. The path is narrow, bordered by hedges of rosemary and yew. Somewhere ahead, a bell tolls. One slow note that seems to float rather than strike. You can almost feel it in your chest. It's nearly dawn, but the monks have been awake for hours. In their world, day begins when darkness still clings to the earth. A candle flickers in every cell. Footsteps echo through the cloister. Bare feet on stone, soft, rhythmic, endlessly patient. The air smells of wax and rain. You can taste the quiet. At the heart of the monastery stands a well. Its rim is worn smooth by centuries of hands. Each morning, the brothers gather around it, one by one, filling wooden bowls. The ritual is silent. A breath, a dip, a trickle of water. They wash their faces and hands, murmuring prayers that mix Latin with the sound of droplets hitting stone. The simple, humble, holy, and strangely intimate. Imagine standing there, the cool air brushing your face as water runs through your fingers. The world feels small and pure for a moment. This isn't just about cleanliness. For them, water was a language, a way to speak to God. The Benedictine rule, written centuries before, required moderation in all things. Food, speech, even washing. Let the body be kept pure as the soul, it said. So they washed not for vanity, but for virtue. After the morning wash, they file into the chapel. The benches creak. Candles flicker against the walls. The smell of incense fills the air, soft and spicy. Frankincense and myrrh, the ancient perfume of devotion. Their voices rise and chant, low and steady, blending with the hum of dawn wind through narrow windows. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows. The rhythm of the world continues. When the sun climbs higher, the monastery wakes fully. In the refectory, a long hall with narrow tables, the brothers take breakfast. Bread, cheese, maybe a cup of weak ale. Before eating, they wash their hands again. Always the water first. It's drawn fresh from the well, carried in copper basins that glint like amber in morning light. You can hear the gentle splash as they pour it, one to another. No words are spoken. Their silence makes every sound sacred. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the trickle, the quiet scrape of wooden benches, the faint sigh of steam from the kitchen hearth. And then stillness. The meal begins. A reader recites scripture as the others eat. No chatter, no clinking plates, only the voice, calm and steady, weaving through the air like incense. It's a sound that could lull you into sleep itself. After the meal, the chores begin. Some tend the gardens. Some copy manuscripts in the scriptorium. A room filled with parchment, ink, and patient silence. The smell of vellum and beeswax hangs in the air. The monks who work there wash their hands before touching any sacred text. Ink and oil must not stain the word. So, they use a mixture of vinegar and herbs, sometimes marjoram, sometimes mint, to keep their fingers clean and supple. Imagine the scene. Sunlight slanting through narrow windows, dust motes dancing in the beam. A monk bends over his work, quill scratching softly. Between lines, he pauses, dips his fingers in the basin, wipes them on linen, and continues. Wash, write, breathe, like a heartbeat. Water punctuates their entire day. It cools them in summer, warms them in winter, purifies them always. They built elaborate systems to channel it, aqueducts, gutters, cisterns. Some monasteries even had indoor baths, small stone rooms where a single stream flowed constantly. A luxury, yes, but one born of devotion, not indulgence. They believed clean water honored God. If you trace your mind's eye over the stone corridors, you'll find small niches where bowls of water rest. Holy water for blessing, not washing. Every time a monk passes, he dips his fingers and makes the sign of the cross. It's reflex, rhythm, reverence. Even thirst becomes prayer. Now imagine stepping into the cloister garden. It's late afternoon. Bees drift lazily over lavender. The fountain murmurs. The air smells of herbs and wet stone. A few monks kneel by the edge, tending the plants that flavor their soaps and balms. Lavender for calm, rosemary for clarity, mint for the breath. They don't think of it as self-care. It's stewardship. The same herbs that season their meals also purify their bodies. The same water that cleans their hands also nourishes the earth. You might smile here how modern that sounds. Sustainability, mindfulness, ritual bathing, all words we use today for habits they practiced naturally. In their world, survival and sanctity were the same thing. As evening approaches, the monastery changes. The bells toll again, deeper now. Shadows stretch across the cloister. The brothers gather once more at the wash basin before the final prayers. Some speak softly of the day's work. Others simply close their eyes, feeling the coolness of water after long hours of labor. You can almost hear the droplets falling, one by one, into the stillness. It's easy to romanticize, but their lives were not gentle. Winters were brutal. Water froze in the buckets. Hands cracked. Sometimes the wells ran dry. And yet, they never abandoned the ritual. If the well froze, they melted snow. If rain failed, they prayed for it. Their devotion to cleanliness became a form of endurance, a quiet defiance against decay. There's a story from the 12th century about a Cistercian abbot named Bernard, who chastised his monks for neglecting their wash basins during a famine. Even in hunger, he said, purity must not perish. It sounds strict, but it carried truth. In washing, they affirmed life. To wash was to hope that tomorrow still mattered. When night falls, the brothers return to their cells. Each one has a small jug of water beside his bed. Before lying down, he splashes his face once more. Not for cleanliness, but for peace. The sound of those splashes, scattered through stone corridors, is like rain in a desert. Gentle, rhythmic, eternal. And then the monastery sleeps. Torches gutter out. The last sound is water dripping somewhere deep within the walls. A reminder that life, even in silence, continues. If you were to visit one of these monasteries today, you might still find the channels they built. Narrow grooves in the stone, darkened by time. Rain still flows through them. whispering the same lullaby those monks once heard. The past never really leaves. It just hums quietly under the noise of now. Picture yourself sitting there in that cloister garden. The moon has risen. The air smells of damp leaves and distant fires. You dip your fingers into the fountain, and the water feels colder than you expect. Somewhere, a nightingale sings. You breathe deeply, and for a moment, you feel as though centuries fold inward. That every wash, every prayer, every gentle act of care lives on in this small, steady sound of flowing water. And maybe it does. The medieval monks never knew the word hygiene, but they understood what it meant to cleanse the spirit through the body. Their rituals weren't about scrubbing. They were about remembering that the world, even in its dirt and sorrow, could be renewed each dawn. Sometimes, as they washed, they whispered a line from the Psalms, Lavabis me, et super nivem dealbaber. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. You can almost hear that whisper echo through the centuries. Soft, patient, timeless. Now imagine the water running through your own hands. Cool, clear, simple. Feel how it slips between your fingers, leaving only calm behind. That's what they felt too, a quiet absolution. And as you rest here, in the dim light of their world, let yourself drift a little. The chant fades, the fountain murmurs, the night deepens. When we wake again, we'll leave the monastery walls behind and step back into the bustling world. The markets, the streets, the people who fought dirt not with devotion but with invention. But for now, breathe slowly. Let the sound of water fill your mind. And rest, in this place where silence and cleanliness once met. The days inside the monastery followed the sun as faithfully as the tides follow the moon. No clock was needed, for their hours were written in light. When morning broke, gold crept slowly across the cloister stones, and the monks stirred again. A new rhythm, the same purpose. You could almost tell the time by the scent in the air. Before sunrise, there was damp wool and wax. By mid-morning, ink and herbs. By evening, bread crusts, ash and lavender. The monastery breathed through its smells. A living calendar made of fragrance and silence. Some of the brothers, the herbalists, worked near the apothecary garden. It wasn't large, but it was orderly. A square of soil divided by narrow paths, each bed marked with a wooden tag. Sage for healing wounds, chamomile for calm, time for cleansing. If you knelt and brushed your fingers across the leaves, the scent would cling for hours. They dried those herbs carefully, hanging them from beams in the infirmary. When sickness struck, they steeped them in wine or vinegar to make tonics, balms, and ointments. But even on ordinary days, the herbalists used them in their small rituals of hygiene. They would crush thyme into warm water for washing wounds, mint leaves into vinegar for rinsing the mouth. Sometimes they burned rosemary to cleanse the air, a medieval version of incense and disinfectant in one. If you were to stand in that room, you'd smell layers of history. Dried flowers, damp parchment, oil lamps, and faint smoke. It's a scent that whispers of patience, centuries of quiet experimentation, of men who learned from plants because they had nothing else to guide them. There's a story, half legend, about one monastery high in the Alps where the brothers used melted snow for their baths. They believed the purity of mountain water made it sacred. They'd collect it in wooden tubs, heat it with stones, and add sprigs of pine or juniper. When steam rose, they would bathe together, modestly, silently, praying between breaths. Imagine the sound of that. Snowmelt dripping, water hissing on hot stones, the hush of prayers woven into mist. Even the air would feel holy. But beyond holiness, there was practicality. For all their devotion, monks were also engineers. They built pipes of clay and lead to carry water across courtyards. In the great abbeys like Cluny or Fountains, water ran through kitchens, latrines, and even primitive baths. One 12th century visitor to Fountains Abbey wrote with astonishment that the monks' necessarium, their communal latrine, was flushed by running water day and night. Imagine that centuries before plumbing became common. The monks had built their own. Cleanliness here wasn't luxury, it was logistics. The smell of rot or waste was an offense to both nose and spirit, so they mastered flow. Gravity did the work. Stone channels whispered underfoot. In winter, frost sealed them shut. In spring, meltwater sang again. The sound of moving water was the heartbeat of the abbey. Picture it now as night falls. The corridors are lit only by a few candles. You can hear distant trickling, somewhere deep within the walls, that endless motion. Outside, snow has started to fall, soft as ash. The fountain in the cloister still runs, its surface steaming faintly against the cold. A single monk stands beside it, dipping his fingers in, whispering a short prayer before retiring. The moonlight glints off the water, and for a heartbeat, it looks like liquid silver. Inside, in the dormitory, dozens of monks prepare for rest. The beds are simple, straw mattresses, rough blankets, small wooden chests. Before sleep, they perform one last act of cleansing, washing the feet. It is both practical and symbolic, removing the dust of the day, the sins of walking through a fallen world. They kneel on cold stone, pour water from one small jug to another, and dry their feet with coarse linen. The sound of it fills the room. The gentle splash, the sigh of cloth, the crackle of the fire. One could fall asleep just listening to that rhythm. Even here they find humor. An old chronicle tells of Brother Aldrich, who, half asleep, washed the wrong pair of feet, his neighbors, and only realized when the man began to laugh. They both chuckled quietly, careful not to wake the others. Even in sanctity, humanity persisted. A good laugh, after all, cleans the soul as surely as water does. In the kitchens, the lay brothers finish their final tasks. The hearth still glows, and above it hangs a large copper cauldron of water, always kept warm for morning washing. The smell of ash mingles with barley and smoke. A cat curls by the fire, purring faintly. Someone stirs the coals before heading to bed. Outside, snow keeps falling. The abbey is wrapped in quiet. Hours pass. Somewhere in the dark, a bell rings for matins, the midnight prayer. One by one, the monks rise, slip on their robes, and shuffle toward the chapel. Their bare feet whisper on the stones. They pause again at the basin. Even in the deepest night, before speaking to God, they wash. A splash, a breath, a crossing of the heart. Water glints in candlelight, falling in thin silver threads. Inside the chapel, the chant begins. Low voices, ancient words, rising and falling like waves. This mesmerizing, almost drowsy, perfect for drifting thought. And yet, there's purpose beneath that calm. Discipline, devotion, endless repetition. They believed that purity of body prepared the way for purity of soul, that washing wasn't vanity but a path toward grace. As you listen, you realize, these men lived inside the rhythm of water. They washed by it, prayed beside it, built around it. Even death returned to it. Bodies were washed before burial, wrapped in linen, blessed with holy water, and laid to rest in the earth's embrace. From fountain to grave, the cycle was complete. Now, imagine leaving that monastery after weeks of quiet living. You walk down the path again, and the sound of the world returns. Carts, chatter, barking dogs, bells from distant towns. The air smells busier, less pure. But inside you, there's still a faint echo of their calm, that sense that water, in all its simplicity, can wash away not just dirt, but noise. Maybe that's why their rituals lingered. Even centuries later, when monasteries fell and kings rose, the idea of holy cleanliness stayed alive in small ways, in pilgrim fountains, in town wells, in the habit of washing hands before meals. The monks had set an example, and the world, though it changed, never forgot. Even now, when you rinse your face before bed, or pour a glass of water at night, you're performing a shadow of their ritual, an unconscious prayer for renewal. So, as we leave those quiet walls, take a slow breath. Hear the last trickle of water fade behind us. The monastery door closes with a wooden sigh. Outside, the fields stretch under pale moonlight, and the road leads onward. Ahead lies a different chapter, one less sacred, more chaotic. For in the cities, Perfume began to replace purity, and the air itself became a battleground of scent and superstition. Now rest for a moment. Listen to your own breath, calm and steady. Feel how your chest rises and falls, like the tide, like the monk's rhythm, like water itself. And as you exhale, follow that rhythm into the next chapter, where the fragrance of the medieval world turns from faith to fear. The wind carries a strange sweetness tonight, something floral, almost pleasant, and yet beneath it, the faint metallic scent of sickness. It is the year 1348. The plague has reached the cities, and with it, the air itself has become an enemy. Imagine the narrow streets of Paris, London, or Florence. Houses lean toward each other like old men whispering secrets. Windows barely open. The air inside is heavy, trapped. People walk quickly, pressing cloths to their faces, soaked in vinegar, rosewater, or camphor. The smell is sharp enough to sting the eyes. The belief is simple and terrible. Disease travels by smell. Foul air, or miasma, they call it, invisible corruption drifting on the breeze. And so, to survive, one must fight scent with scent. Everywhere, perfume becomes armor. The wealthy carry pomanders, tiny globes of silver, carved with filigree patterns, filled with cloves, cinnamon, or ambergris. You might see a nobleman lift his pomander to his nose as he walks past a beggar, breathing through it like a shield. The poor cannot afford silver, so they carry sprigs of herbs, lavender tucked into sleeves, rosemary braided into their hair. Even the priests sprinkle rosewater in churches, hoping to drown the plague's breath beneath fragrance and prayer. The city, once foul, now smells of desperation. A strange bouquet of fear. Rose and rot, cinnamon and corpse, sandalwood and smoke. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel it. The air heavy, perfumed, uneasy. At the height of the plague, physicians wore long black robes and bird-like masks, the beaks stuffed with herbs. They looked like nightmares made of leather. Inside those beaks were layers of mint, cloves, camphor, and crushed flowers, the doctor's portable garden of protection. Each breath filtered through that fragrant barrier. They believed it could save them, and perhaps in some way it did, not through science but through faith. There's something haunting about that image. A figure in black moving slowly through the fog, clutching a staff, the scent of herbs trailing behind. Somewhere nearby, bells toll. A window closes, and the doctor keeps walking. The ordinary people copied what they saw. They filled their homes with scent. Bundles of lavender hung from ceilings, bowls of vinegar sat on windowsills, and smoke from burning sage curled through the rafters. Perfume became medicine, deodorant, and prayer all at once. In a small town in Italy, a merchant named Matteo boiled a mixture of rosemary, thyme, and juniper berries every morning, letting the steam fill his house. His neighbors laughed at first, but when the sickness passed his door, they stopped laughing. They began to copy him, each adding their own herbs, basil, sage, bay leaves, until the whole town smelled like a kitchen disguised as a church. Even the streets changed. Vendors began to sell plague waters, scented distillations that promised protection. "Good for the lungs," they cried. "Keeps foul air away." One famous recipe, called the Four Thieves vinegar, mixed garlic, rosemary, and cloves. Legend said it came from robbers who looted plague victims but never caught the disease, thanks to this potion. Whether true or not, people believed, and belief in those dark years was the strongest medicine of all. You can picture it. A row of glass bottles in a wooden stall, sunlight glinting through them, the air thick with vinegar and spice. A woman leans close, sniffing cautiously. She buys one, ties it to her belt, and walks away with a little more courage than before. Because sometimes, survival isn't about facts. It's about the small comforts that make fear bearable. As the plague years drag on, the practice of true bathing nearly disappears. Public baths are seen as dangerous, places where pores open to poison. People close their bathhouses and turn to dry cleanliness. Linen, perfume, smoke. They change their shirts often, not because of vanity, but because linen was believed to draw impurities from the skin. To wear fresh linen was to cleanse. There's a strange beauty in that idea that fabric itself could wash you. And in a way, it wasn't entirely wrong. Changing linen did help remove sweat and bacteria. Medieval people couldn't name the science, but they felt the truth of it. Imagine a woman in 1350 standing by her window, shaking out a clean chemise, the white fabric glowing in sunlight. She breathes in its scent. Lavender, smoke, and a trace of air. That's her bath for the day. And as she slips it over her head, she sighs with quiet relief, the way you might after stepping out of a shower. The city outside is louder now. Blacksmiths hammer, children shout, bells call the hours. And always the smell, heavy, mingled, alive. In Paris, apothecaries grow rich selling scented powders. In London, perfumers begin crafting complex mixtures, orange peel with cinnamon, violet with musk. They are chemists of illusion, turning fear into fragrance. Somewhere in their little workshops, glass bottles clink, copper stills hiss, and steam curls through the beams. A man in a leather apron leans over his concoction, smiling faintly as the aroma fills the room. He doesn't know he's laying the foundation for modern perfumery. He only knows people will pay anything to smell like hope. By the end of the 14th century, Europe smells utterly different than it did 100 years before. The people are cleaner in scent, dirtier in truth. Soap has become rare, baths suspect, and perfume the new purity. A paradox blooms. The cleaner they smell, the less they wash. And yet, there's tenderness in it. A mother rubbing rosewater into her child's hair before sleep. A young man carrying dried lavender in his pocket because his sweetheart once said it reminded her of summer. Even in fear, they find small rituals of beauty. Let's walk through one of those streets together. It's dusk now, and the city glows with lanterns. The cobblestones shine from rain. People hurry home before curfew, their cloaks brushing past, leaving trails of scent behind. Musk, resin, smoke. A baker closes his shutters. The smell of bread escapes one last time before the latch clicks. You turn a corner and pass a candle shop. Beeswax and honey melt into the night air. For a moment, the world smells sweet again. The bell of St. Eustache rings, slow and solemn. The sound ripples through the streets like breath. Somewhere, a cat darts across the path, tail flicking. Rain begins to fall, light and steady, washing the air. Perfume and petrichor mix, flowers and earth. The perfect contradiction. A woman hurries past you, her skirt darkening from the drizzle. She holds a handkerchief to her face, embroidered linen soaked in rosewater. When she lowers it, you see her lips move in silent prayer. She's not praying for beauty. She's praying to wake tomorrow. It's easy to forget that cleanliness, for them, was a kind of hope. They washed not to please others, but to push back against chaos. In a world without answers, scent became certainty. If you smelled good, you were safe or at least safer. And so, for centuries, Europe became a continent of fragrance. The age of soap had ended. The age of scent had begun. But fragrance cannot keep fear forever. Beneath the perfume, the truth always lingers. Water forgotten, superstition in bloom. Still, there's beauty in their trying. Because even through darkness, they sought sweetness. They tried to make the air itself kind again. When the plague finally waned, the survivors stepped into a quieter world. The air smelled cleaner, lighter, like rain after fire. They looked around at empty houses, at overgrown gardens, and they began to rebuild. Perfume stayed, but its purpose softened. It was no longer a shield, but a memory of survival. In Florence, a perfumer's apprentice began crafting fragrances not for fear, but for joy. He mixed citrus with rosemary, calling it aqua mirabilis, wonderful water. It was meant to refresh, not protect. That idea would eventually become the world's first cologne. Isn't that remarkable? Out of death, something fragrant was born. The same herbs once used to mask decay now became symbols of life. The same distilleries that boiled vinegar for plague remedies now produced scented waters for beauty. The people who once washed only in perfume began slowly, to rediscover the comfort of real water again. The pendulum swung as it always does, but for a long while still, perfume remained the language of health. Even kings carried it. Queen Elizabeth I demanded that every room she entered be freshly perfumed, for she could not bear foul air. Perfume was cleanliness. Cleanliness was divinity. And so, from the fear of plague grew the art of fragrance, the idea that scent could change not just how the world smells, but how it feels. You can almost picture it. An apothecary shop, late evening. A small lamp glows, illuminating glass bottles filled with amber liquid. Each one holds a story, a survival, a superstition, a dream. The apothecary wipes his hands on a cloth, smiles, and corks another bottle. Outside, the rain has stopped. The city sleeps, and in the air, faintly, the scent of rosemary lingers, the fragrance of hope. Take a slow breath now, in and out. Let that imagined scent fade into quiet. And as you exhale, remember, every perfume, every ritual, every superstition was simply a way for frightened people to make the world gentler for one more day. And tomorrow, in our story, we'll follow the thread of that gentleness into the kitchens and hearths of the medieval home, where soap was reborn not in laboratories, but in pots and cauldrons of ordinary life. Close your eyes now, listen to the rain, and drift slowly toward the next dream. The rain has stopped, but the streets still glisten like rivers of glass. In every puddle, a lantern trembles, its reflection shivering with the wind. The scent of wet earth fills the air, blending with the faint perfume still clinging to people's clothes. It's as if the whole world has been washed, but only on the surface. In a narrow alley behind the perfumer's shop, a young boy kneels beside a barrel, scooping rainwater into jars. His name is Lucien. He doesn't know chemistry or medicine, only that his master says the sky water is the purest kind, untainted, blessed by the heavens. He fills each jar carefully, humming to himself. The jars will be used tomorrow for new perfumes. Lilac and sage for noble ladies who wish to smell untouched by fear. Inside, the perfumer sits by his still, the fire low and steady. The air hums with warmth. Copper pipes twist like vines, dripping slowly into glass flasks. Steam carries the scent of rosemary and cloves, wrapping the room in a haze that feels both sacred and scientific. You can almost hear the soft hiss, the drip, the perfumer's breath as he leans close to check his work. This man isn't merely making perfume. He's bottling reassurance. He wipes sweat from his brow with a linen cloth soaked in orange flower water. The scent clears his head. For him, fragrance isn't a mask. It's memory. Each bottle he fills reminds him of a spring morning before the plague, when his wife brushed his hair with rose oil and laughed at the streaks it left on his tunic. She's gone now, like so many others, but the smell of roses keeps her near. The world outside has changed, but scent remains the thread tying people to what they've lost. Perfume becomes remembrance, a private altar in every household. You can almost picture them. Bottles lined on shelves, corks darkened with oil, the air heavy with sweetness and sorrow. In Florence, one of the few cities still brave enough for beauty, merchants begin selling scented gloves. The idea spreads like gossip. Soft leather, steeped in ambergris and jasmine, meant to protect the wearer from disease and bad air. A noblewoman slides them on, lifts her hand to her face, and inhales. For a heartbeat, she feels invincible. She steps into her carriage, the scent of her gloves following like a ghost. Perfume is becoming armor again, but now it's also fashion. At court, people exchange scented handkerchiefs as tokens of affection. Lovers trade perfumes as we might trade music. This one smells of pine forests, this one of violets after rain. They don't know it yet, but they're inventing the language of modern romance. Still, the shadow of the plague lingers. The city physicians warn against stagnant air, so people burn herbs in their homes. Smoke curls from every window, every hearth. 1,000 tiny pyres of hope. The sky above the city glows faintly orange at night from the fires. From a distance, it looks as though the stars have fallen to earth. There's a peculiar comfort in that glow. tells the frightened that they're not alone, that everyone else is trying too. If you listen carefully, you might hear the whisper of water simmering in copper pots, the murmur of prayers as people stir their remedies. Each home has its own recipe. A handful of sage, a pinch of salt, a drop of vinegar. They call it cleansing the air. You might call it survival disguised as ritual. Sometimes a curious sweetness floats through the streets. Apple peels drying near a fire, honey boiling for syrup, lavender hung from rafters. The medieval world, though frightened, has become fragrant. But perfume can only do so much. Beneath the scent, the truth festers. The rivers grow darker, the wells foul. Cities expand faster than they can clean themselves. The same perfume that masks fear now hides decay. In London, a royal decree bans the dumping of refuse into the Thames, a rule almost no one obeys. The river smells of life and death entwined. Yet along its banks the perfumers thrive. Their shops are bright, their customers constant. People need scent as they need prayer. A thin line of beauty stretched over chaos. One evening, as the sun sets over the river, a barge drifts past, its oars dipping silently into the water. On board, a nobleman lifts a vial to his nose and sighs. He's wearing a cloak of fur, embroidered with gold thread, but it's the tiny glass bottle that makes him feel safe. The scent inside is called Aqua Angelica. He believes it can guard him from evil. He doesn't know that it contains alcohol, one of the few things that truly could kill germs. Faith and science have crossed paths without noticing. You might smile at that, how close they were even in ignorance. Elsewhere, in a poorer quarter, a mother rocks her child to sleep. She burns thyme on a brick near the bed to chase away bad air. The child breathes deeply, the smoke soft and green. Tomorrow, she'll wash the floorboards with vinegar and hang fresh mint in the window. She doesn't know why it helps, only that it feels right. Maybe that's enough. For all their errors, the medieval people loved life fiercely. Their faith in scent, in herbs, in ritual, it wasn't foolishness. It was tenderness wearing the mask of superstition. As the years roll on, the plague retreats, but the habits remain. People bathe rarely, scent often. Water has become a thing of fear. A nobleman might live his entire life without ever stepping into a full bath. Instead, he keeps a servant whose sole job is to perfume his clothes. Every morning, the servant shakes scented powder onto his linen shirts, sprinkles rosewater on his sleeves, and brushes his hair with combs rubbed in oil. The air around him glows with fragrance. He looks immaculate until he lifts an arm too high. It's strange to think that the most perfumed people in history might also have been the least washed. Yet the idea persists. Purity through aroma, holiness through smell. The church blesses incense. The nobles bless themselves with musk. The line between sacred and scented blurs. In the cathedrals, the faithful kneel beneath clouds of incense. Frankincense rises in silver trails toward the vaulted ceiling, carrying prayers with it. The air is thick enough to taste. Resin and candle smoke, the smell of eternity. A man coughs softly. The sound echoes, but no one leaves. The scent is part of salvation. Even the graveyards smell different now. Flowers are planted everywhere, not just for beauty, but for mercy. Lilies, rosemary, and rue. The earth tries to heal itself through fragrance. And so the century closes with a paradox. The body, neglected. The air, perfumed. The heart caught somewhere in between. If you were to walk those streets in twilight, you'd find that the smell of human life, sweet and bitter, smoky and floral, was almost music. You could follow it through time. The herbal smoke of fear, the spicy bravado of survival, the soft sweetness of rebirth. Maybe that's what scent really is, the sound of history breathed in. Now picture the next morning. The city is quiet after rain. Sunlight slants through shutters. A woman opens her window and pours a small jug of rosewater onto the sill. The drops fall, catching the light. She breathes in, smiles faintly, and whispers a short prayer of thanks that the plague has passed. Down the street, a boy sells sprigs of lavender. A man sharpens his blade at the fountain. A baker opens his door and fills the street with warmth. The perfume still lingers, but it no longer smells like fear. It smells like morning. And somewhere, in a small courtyard, water begins to boil in a cauldron. A woman stirs it slowly, watching fat and ash melt together into a thick, creamy paste. Soap, true soap, is being reborn. We'll visit her soon. But for now, take another slow breath. In and out. The scent of roses fades. The memory of plague drifts away. What remains is renewal. The promise that every fear, no matter how fragrant or foul, will one day wash away. The morning smells of wood ash and milk. The fire has just been kindled in a narrow kitchen tucked behind a stone house near the market square. Light filters through a small, leaded window, pale, dusty, patient. A woman moves about the room, sleeves rolled to her elbows, apron tied tight. On the table sits a cauldron blackened by years of use. Beside it, a jug of olive oil, a bowl of lye made from ashes soaked overnight, and a handful of herbs gathered from her garden. This is Isabeau, the soap maker of the town. Not famous, not noble, but needed. She inherited her craft from her mother, who learned it from hers. The art is simple, though most would call it alchemy. Fat, ash, and water made into something that cleans. When she stirs, the mixture thickens slowly, creamy at the edges, dark in the center. The smell is sharp at first, then mellow, the kind of scent that feels honest, not sweet. You can hear the fire crackle beneath the pot, the spoon scraping the sides. She hums as she works, the same tune her mother used to sing, a song about rivers and rain. In a world perfumed by fear, she's making something braver, soap. Once, the church had called soap a vanity, a temptation of the flesh. But after the plague, the tone shifted. People longed for the feeling of real water again, for the memory of warmth against skin. And so, quietly, in kitchens like this, cleanliness returned. The first soaps were humble things, grayish, gritty, sometimes streaked with herbs. They smelled of olive oil and earth. But to those who used them, they felt like rebirth. Imagine dipping a cloth into that lather for the first time, watching it bubble faintly, feeling the smoothness under your fingers. The scent of ashes and oil mingles, life pulled from what was burned. Isabeau pours the mixture into wooden molds lined with linen. It will harden there for days. While she waits, she scrubs her hands in a bowl of leftover lye water, rinsing the stickiness away. The water bites, but she smiles. It's worth it. Outside, the market stirs awake. Voices rise, carts rumble. Geese honk indignantly as they're herded past. The town smells like onions, hay, and damp wool. But near Isabeau's stall, another scent curls through the air, faint, clean, almost metallic. People stop. They tilt their heads. "What's that smell?" a woman asks. "It smells like fresh." And so, slowly, the idea of bathing returns to the people. Not as luxury, not as sin, but as comfort. In the years that follow, soap spreads like rumor. From Marseille to Venice, from Genoa to Seville, artisans begin refining the craft. They boil olive oil with lye from sea plants instead of ashes, making the lather smoother, whiter. The result is the legendary Castile soap, mild, fragrant, long-lasting. It's said that Queen Isabella of Castile herself sent bars as gifts to nobles across Europe. Imagine opening one of those early soaps, hard as stone, smelling faintly of sea salt and olives. You rub it between your palms, and the foam comes alive, soft and milky. After centuries of perfume, the world has rediscovered the miracle of water and touch. In Venice, the craft becomes guarded like treasure. Soap makers form guilds, swearing oaths to protect their recipes. They build furnaces near the canals, where barges bring oil from the south and barrels of ash from the forests. At night, the glow of the kilns turns the sky orange. Steam rises, carrying the smell of soap across the lagoon. If you stood there, you might think it was the scent of civilization itself returning. Back in our little town, Isabeau's business thrives. She sells her bars wrapped in cloth, tied with twine. People come from miles away, carrying baskets and jugs to trade for a piece. Her soap becomes more than a tool. It's a token of care. Mothers buy it for their children. Soldiers carry it on the road. Lovers gift it before parting. It smells of home. On a warm afternoon, a monk from the nearby monastery visits her stall. He holds one of her bars in his hands, turning it thoughtfully. "We once thought water opened the door to sickness," he says softly. "Now it feels like grace again." Isabeau smiles. "It was never the water's fault," she replies. "Only our fear." He nods, pockets the soap, and walks away humming one of his psalms. The town changes with time. A new fountain is built in the square, carved with angels pouring water from urns. Children play there at dusk, splashing barefoot, their laughter echoing off the stones. The smell of soap mingles with the scent of bread from the baker's oven. Clean hands pass coins. Clean faces smile. Life has become lighter. At night, Isabeau sits by her hearth, watching the flames dance. On the shelf above her hangs a small wooden cross and, beside it, a bar of her first soap. Cracked, faded, but still whole. She keeps it as a reminder that even after darkness, something simple can shine again. There's something hypnotic in this rhythm. The stirring, the cooling, the selling. The world keeps turning, and cleanliness returns not with a sermon, but with a spoon and a cauldron. Soap-making spreads further north. In England, recipes begin to include tallow, rendered animal fat, making soap cheaper but harsher. The wealthy still prefer the olive oil soaps of Italy and Spain. But in every region, the craft becomes part of daily life. A child grows up with the smell of lye and lavender as familiar as bread and firewood. A sign of a house well kept, a mother's pride. Picture an English cottage in springtime. The door stands open to the fields. On the table, a row of soap bars sits drying in the sun, pale yellow and streaked with herbs. The bees buzz nearby. A woman hums as she polishes her wooden bowl with one of the softer pieces. The soap squeaks faintly, leaving a sheen behind. Her child laughs, dipping fingers into the bubbles, amazed that dirt can disappear. You can almost smell it. Clean linen, smoke, and wildflowers. Soap begins to cross borders like a pilgrim. It travels in ships and saddlebags, traded for spices and silk. Merchants wrap it in waxcloth to keep it dry, each piece stamped with a maker's mark. A crescent moon, a cross, a lion. The marks become reputations. In a world still afraid of contagion, these tiny bricks of purity become treasures. By the 1400s, soap is no longer rare. It's a quiet revolution, one that doesn't make headlines but changes everything. Clothes are cleaner, hands softer, sickness rarer. The scent of humanity itself begins to shift, from the musk of survival to the gentler smell of care. Yet superstition still lingers. Some whisper that too much washing weakens the body, that it washes away strength. Others believe it invites pride. But most ignore such warnings. After centuries of perfume and fear, they've fallen in love again with the honest touch of water. In great cities, new bathhouses open, cautious at first, then grander. Men and women bathe separately, candles flickering along the walls. Steam fills the rooms, carrying the scent of soap, herbs, and warm stone. People laugh, talk, sing. Bathing becomes social again, joyful. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. Buckets pouring, water splashing, voices echoing off marble. It's like the sound of civilization rediscovering its own heartbeat. One traveler from the East, arriving in Venice, wrote, "Here, people smell not of smoke and fear, but of cleanliness and sun, compliment wrapped in poetry." And indeed, the city sparkled with that new scent. Not perfume, but purity. Even kings began to notice. In France, Louis XI demanded that his linens be washed twice weekly, scandalous luxury for the time. But it set a fashion. The nobility followed. Cleanliness became a sign of refinement. The more frequent the washing, the higher the class. Strange, isn't it? What once was humility had become elegance. A bar of soap, once humble as ash, now rested beside golden combs and silver mirrors. But among all the glimmer and powder, the real miracle remained the same. A pot, a fire, and a woman stirring patience into purity. Let's return to Isabeau one last time. Years have passed. Her hands are lined now, her hair streaked with gray, but she still wakes early, still stirs the cauldron. When she lifts the spoon, the mixture swirls like honey. Steam rises, catching the morning light. She closes her eyes and breathes in. Not perfume, not fear, just the clean scent of soap and smoke. She smiles. The world is healing. And as we leave her there, in that small, warm kitchen, the smell of soap lingers in our imagination. Simple, honest, eternal. The age of superstition is ending. The age of understanding is dawning. From ashes and oil, from fear and faith, the world has washed itself clean again. Now, as the fire burns low, take one slow breath. Inhale the faint scent of olive oil and rain. Exhale the centuries. We'll step quietly from this humble kitchen into the next chapter, where water itself becomes wealth, and cities begin to sparkle with fountains, baths, and promise. Sleep, if you wish, in the comfort of cleanliness rediscovered. Or drift with me, softly, into the sound of water running through new pipes, the veins of a modern age beginning to stir. Evening settles gently over the town. The smell of cooking fires and fresh bread drifts through the streets, mingling with something new. The faint, clean scent from Isabeau's workshop travels quietly the way good news does. Dogs follow it with curious noses. Neighbors lean out their windows and smile. The town has begun to change, and though no one marks the day, they feel it in the air. Clean hands shake. Clean children run through puddles and return to mothers who scold them gently, then wash their faces with warm water and a sliver of soap. It feels like a small miracle every time the dirt disappears and the skin beneath gleams pink and alive. Soon, soap becomes more than a household secret. Merchants begin to sell it in stalls beside candles, herbs, and spices. Sailors carry it on their voyages, calling it a stone that loves water. Keeps their hands soft even after salt and rope have roughened them. In letters sent from port to port, travelers write of its scent: olive, sea, smoke. In a way, soap becomes memory itself, each bar a piece of home. At the same time, science stirs quietly behind the curtain of trade. Alchemists experiment with ashes and oils, noting how different fats change the lather. Some use walnut oil, others linseed. A few daring souls add honey or crushed herbs. Their notebooks are filled with scribbles. Bubbles increased, sweet scent remains. They don't yet know chemistry, but they are inventing it line by line. In Marseille, a man named Savenir perfects a recipe so fine that it becomes legend. He uses seawater in his cauldron, believing the salt gives his soap strength. The bars he makes are pale green, square, stamped with a seal of his initials. They smell faintly of sunshine and seaweed. The city will remember him forever in its name, Savon, and soap will never again leave its shores. Let's linger there for a moment by his workshop. The harbor hums outside, gulls crying overhead. The air smells of tar, brine, and citrus. Inside, the fire roars under the copper vat. Workers stir the thickening mixture with oaken paddles, their faces shining from heat. Steam fills the rafters. Someone laughs. A deep, honest laugh, half lost in the echo of the waves. The sound feels alive. This is not luxury. This is rebirth forged by ordinary hands. When night falls, they pour the soap into molds lined along wooden tables. Rows upon rows of them cool in the moonlight. Tomorrow, the workers will cut them into neat cubes, stack them, and stamp them with pride. Each bar a promise of cleanliness in an uncertain world. By morning, sailors will load crates of these soaps onto ships bound for Spain, Flanders, even England. Each voyage will carry a little more light than it did before. You can almost smell it from here, that blend of olive oil, brine, and smoke, drifting across the Mediterranean, softening the sharpness of history itself. Meanwhile, in distant villages, soap still bubbles quietly in iron pots. Isabeau's daughter, now grown, teaches her own children to stir and pour, to watch the lye carefully, to know the scent of readiness by heart. When it smells less of fire and more of rain, she says, it's done. That's how knowledge survives, through scent, through touch, through memory rather than words. Books will one day be written about chemistry, but for now it's enough to trust the nose, the eyes, the rhythm of the spoon. The people begin to wash more often. Not daily, perhaps, but regularly. Sunday baths become common. Families gathering buckets, heating water, pouring it into wooden tubs. Children splash. Parents sigh. The first time warm water touches tired feet, there's laughter. The kind that feels both strange and holy. Cleanliness becomes not just survival, but celebration. In cities, fountains begin to flow again. Fresh water runs through carved mouths of lions and angels. People fill jugs, wash their faces, even their clothes. There's a kind of joy in it. The shimmer of light on moving water, the music of buckets clanking, the smell of wet stone after centuries of fear. Soap sellers line the squares, calling their wares with pride. From Castile, from Provence, the bars gleam in the sun, wrapped in linen or parchment. Housewives touch them reverently, like fine fabric. Some even wear small slivers in pouches at their belts to perfume their clothes. Perfume hasn't vanished. It's simply found a new partner, cleanliness. The two scents blend in the air. Lavender and lye, rose and ash, beauty and truth. By the 15th century, soap-making has become an art. Recipes are passed through families like heirlooms. The craft's language changes, too. Words like saponify begin to appear, from sapo, Latin for soap. The world is rediscovering itself through vocabulary as much as through cleanliness. In noble houses, bathing rooms return, tiled, candlelit, fragrant with herbs. A servant pours warm water into a copper tub while the lady of the house tests the temperature with a careful hand. She steps in slowly, the soap resting on a small wooden tray. Steam curls upward, carrying a scent of lavender and honey. The water ripples. For a moment, she closes her eyes and feels centuries wash away. No fear, no plague, no superstition. Just warmth, breath, and peace. Outside, the city hums with new life. Streets are cleaner. Wells are tended. Soapmakers are honored, not mocked. The church bells ring above them, not to warn, but to bless. If you were to walk those streets, you'd feel it, the shift in air. It smells lighter, freer, touched by olive and rain. The people look healthier, their clothes brighter. A new belief has taken root, that care for the body honors the soul. One evening, Isabeau, now very old, sits by the fountain her town has built in her honor. Children splash nearby. Someone has carved her name on the base. She who brought water back to joy. She laughs softly when she sees it. I only stirred the pot, she says. The rest was always in us. The sun sets behind her, gilding the water. For a moment, the ripples look like melted gold. She dips her fingers in and brings them to her face, breathing in the faint scent of clean air and olive. Her eyes close, she smiles. The world is gentle again. And so, from one woman's kitchen to 1,000 workshops, from ashes to art, soap has returned to humanity. Not as perfume, not as superstition, but as trust, the trust that what is dirty can be made pure again. This is the secret of the cauldron, that from what is burned and broken, something beautiful can be made anew. A truth that reaches far beyond soap, perhaps even into the heart. Now, as the last embers fade, imagine yourself standing in that town square. The fountain murmurs. The air smells faintly of salt and rosemary. Somewhere, a window closes, and a cat curls by a hearth. The world feels clean, peaceful, half asleep. Take a slow breath in and out. Water has returned to the people. Fire has turned fear into fragrance, oil into purity. The dark ages have begun to glow from within. Tomorrow, we'll wander into the cities where that glow becomes brilliance, where fountains rise, pipes flow, and hygiene becomes not just survival, but art. For now, let your eyes rest. Listen to the quiet hiss of imagined water, the whisper of lather dissolving. Let it carry you toward dreams. The sun rises over Florence like a brushstroke of gold. Bells answer one another across tiled rooftops. Pigeons scatter above the domes. From every alley comes the sound of water. Steady, confident, alive. You can almost hear the city waking through its fountains. Down by the Arno, the first washerwomen are already at work. They kneel on worn planks, sleeves rolled, skirts pinned high, voices weaving together in song. Soap bubbles drift down the current like tiny rainbows. The scent of lye and lavender hangs in the cool morning air. It is the 1400s now. The Dark Ages have softened into dawn. Stone aqueducts, silent for centuries, run again. Engineers and dreamers, men who read the writings of Rome and whispered the secrets of Greece, have turned water into architecture. Every street, every courtyard, every palace has its own heartbeat of flowing water. Imagine walking there. Narrow streets gleaming after rain, fountains carved into every corner. Lions, nymphs, angels pouring endless streams. The sound is everywhere, a lullaby for the living. The people trust water again. They drink it, wash with it, paint it, praise it. Children splash their hands. Merchants rinse fruit in marble basins. Artists watch how light trembles on the ripples and learn to capture it in pigment. Even cleanliness becomes art. In the Piazza della Signoria, a new fountain is being unveiled. Sculptors have spent years shaping it from pure white marble. When the valve opens, a clear stream leaps upward, catching the sun, and the crowd gasps. Some cheer, some cross themselves. After centuries of fear, water once again feels divine. Farther north, in Venice, water is not merely a blessing. It is a neighbor. Canals glitter like ribbons of glass between palaces. Gondoliers wash their boats each morning, sloshing buckets of canal water mixed with a little soap from Marseille. Even the air tastes faintly saline, alive. The city hums with it, a harmony of tide, trade, and cleanliness. The Venetians pride themselves on it. Travelers from the north write letters home about a city that bathes itself each day. It's exaggeration, of course, but the idea shines. That civilization and water walk hand in hand. Public baths reopen, brighter and safer than before. Some are small courtyards with sun-warmed basins. Others are great halls lined with mosaics and steam. Families come on holy days, carrying towels embroidered with initials. The air is thick with the scent of rosemary and heated stone. Children laugh. Old men soak in silence. The splash of water against tile sounds like prayer made tangible. For centuries, fear kept people from bathing. Now, fear itself is washed away. You can almost see it. A father lifting his little boy into the pool, the child squealing as warm water covers his toes. A woman combing her hair by the edge, drops glinting like pearls. A candle guttering in the damp air. Each moment is ordinary, yet sacred proof that cleanliness can be joy. The Renaissance mind adored order, proportion, and beauty, and water suited them perfectly. Could be measured, channeled, sculpted. Architects built fountains not just for need, but for pleasure, to remind the world that purity could be permanent. Leonardo da Vinci himself sketched entire cities planned around flowing water. Canals for transport, drains for cleanliness, hidden channels for fountains that would sing. He called it Il Respiro della Città, the breath of the city. And in a way, every drop was breath indeed. The murmur of fountains became the city's pulse, its lullaby at night. Picture yourself walking those streets after sunset. The shops are closing. Shutters clack softly. The air cools. From somewhere nearby, a fountain trickles under lamplight, silver against shadow. The smell of wet stone and soap drifts through the square. Someone strums a lute. Someone else laughs quietly. You lean against the balustrade and listen. The sound is endless but never loud. A hush that keeps time with your heartbeat. It's easy to forget that these fountains were also feats of science. Hidden beneath them run pipes of lead and terracotta, carrying water from distant hills. Teams of workers clean them every week, scraping away silt, measuring flow. City councils issue ordinances. No washing of beasts near the fountains. No throwing refuse into the conduits. Cleanliness has become civic pride. In Rome, they revive the aqueducts of the emperors. Water returns to the city with such abundance that people call it a miracle. The Trevi Fountain, centuries later, will be born of this same tradition. Beauty built upon plumbing, art upon engineering, poetry upon hygiene. The truth is simple yet grand. When people learn to cherish water, they learn to cherish life. Back in Florence, an old sculptor named Benedetto spends his evenings by the Arno, washing marble dust from his hands. He says the river carries away the fatigue of the day. The soap he uses comes from Isabeau's lineage, her grandson's trade now thriving in Provence. He likes its mild scent, the way it squeaks between his fingers. Clean hands carve clean lines, he says with a smile. Maybe he's right. Even the poorest families keep a small basin near the door now. Guests rinse their hands before meals. Children wash before bed. It has become habit, second nature. When water touches skin, it feels like greeting the divine. Listen closely. Can you hear it? The constant murmur of fountains, the rhythm of buckets, the hush of sponges wrung out over stone. The whole city whispers with cleanliness. It is not sterile. It is alive. Every drop glimmers with gratitude. In the palaces, maids polish marble floors with soapy cloths until they shine like still ponds. In workshops, apprentices scrub brushes and hands, learning that art begins with order. Even in the taverns, mugs are rinsed between customers, a new courtesy spreading faster than rumor. And amid it all, perfume remains, but changed. No longer a mask for dirt, it becomes a companion to purity. A drop of rose oil after a bath, a sprig of mint near a basin, a scented candle beside running water. Clean and fragrance now dance together like notes in harmony. One afternoon, rain begins to fall over the city. People don't run. They lift their faces to it. Children stretch their hands out the windows. The rainwater pours down the gutters, into the fountains, through the drains, singing through the stone channels the way blood moves through veins. The city drinks. The city breathes. And for the first time in centuries, no one fears what the water might bring. Night again. The moon rises above domes and chimneys. Somewhere, a washerwoman closes her shutters and listens to the fountain outside. The splash echoes softly against the walls. She smiles. It sounds, she whispers to her daughter, like the world remembering itself, and perhaps it is. For water has always been memory, the oldest lullaby, the first mirror. In its reflection, humankind has seen both fear and redemption. Tonight, it shows only calm. Take a breath with it now. Inhale the scent of rain on stone. Exhale the centuries of silence broken by flow. The Renaissance has given the world its clearest gift. The return of running water, the rediscovery of the beauty of being clean. Tomorrow, our story will drift toward the final chapter. The quiet homes where nightly routines take hold, where washing becomes intimacy, and where the age of modern hygiene begins to whisper its first words. But for now, let the fountains keep murmuring. Let the city of water cradle you in its sound. Close your eyes and rest beside the ripple. Even as the Renaissance glittered in palaces and plazas, water still ruled the humbler corners of life. Far from Florence and Venice, in the quiet valleys and mountain towns, fountains became meeting places. They were not marble gods or sculpted nymphs, but simple stone basins, square, deep, greened by moss. People gathered there at dawn, pitchers balanced on hips, gossip rising with the mist. There was always laughter near a fountain. Even when times were lean, the sound of water made people kinder. A child might dip a hand into the stream and watch the ripples spread, whispering to himself as though the fountain could answer. An old man might rest on the edge, soaking his cracked feet in the coolness. The water didn't belong to anyone. It belonged to everyone. And that, more than sculpture or invention, was the true miracle of the age water shared. Imagine one of those mornings. The hills glow gold with early light, bells ring far away, and the square smells of bread baking. The first to arrive are the washerwomen. They unroll bundles of linen, dip them in the basin, scrub with homemade soap that smells faintly of thyme and sea salt. bubbles drift away, catching sunlight. The women talk of births, of crops, of weather, everything ordinary and sacred. At the far end, a young boy fills his father's wineskin with clear water. He takes a sip and laughs when it drips down his chin. Nearby, two monks pause on their walk, bow slightly to the fountain, and continue in silence. Life flows easily here. A traveler passing through might notice that these villages smell cleaner than any city he has known. He'll write in his diary, "In these hills, the people smell of soap and bread, and the children's faces shine." That small sentence will tell the story of a world healed not by war or king, but by water. Further south, in Spain, the Moors had never forgotten the art of bathing. Their influence lingered even as kingdoms rose and fell. The Alhambra, with its marble courtyards and trickling channels, still whispered the beauty of water as devotion. Every chamber held a fountain, every fountain a reflection of heaven. When Christian rulers took those cities, they could not destroy the water, they learned from it. Soon, Spanish towns sparkled with aqueducts again. Granada, Toledo, Córdoba, each became a chorus of flow and echo, and with it, the Iberian art of soap-making blossomed. From Andalusia came bars so white and smooth they looked like carved ivory. Traders called them jabón blanco and carried them to every harbor of the Mediterranean. Sailors returned from those ports with stories of baths scented with orange blossom, of courtyards where water sang through stone channels all night long. They brought home bars wrapped in linen and said, "This is what paradise smells like." From then on, the idea of paradise always smelled faintly of soap. In the north, where winters bit harder, water was less kind. Ice sealed the wells, rivers turned to glass. But even there, people adapted. They warmed snow in pots, saving every drop for washing. They hung basins near the hearth so the chill wouldn't sting the skin. And when spring returned, the first act was always the same: a grand washing. Curtains, linens, hair, hands, everything. They called it renewing. The whole village shimmered like a stream reborn. It wasn't vanity, it was gratitude. As decades turned, the art of plumbing returned as well. Wealthy houses in Florence and Paris began to install lead pipes, bringing water directly into kitchens. It was slow progress, expensive, imperfect, but revolutionary. No longer did every drop need to be fetched. The rhythm of the day changed. Morning washing became easier, evening cleaning less of a chore. Water had finally come home. One can picture a Florentine servant filling a copper basin for her mistress, steam rising from the surface. She tests the temperature with her wrist, warm, not hot, then adds a curl of scented soap. The mistress dips her hands, rubs them together, and smiles. "It feels," she says softly, "like forgiveness." Outside, in the same city, artisans build small fountains not for decoration, but for neighborhood use. A pipe runs from the main aqueduct into a public trough. Anyone may drink. Anyone may wash. Clean water has become a civic right. The word public takes on a new gentleness. Visitors describe these sights with wonder. An English traveler writes home, "Here, in Italy, water runs even in the streets, and the people cleanse their faces as if they loved the sun itself." His letters spread north, and soon northern cities begin to dream of their own fountains. Hygiene is contagious, but pleasantly so. The same era that painted ceilings and sculpted angels was also quietly cleaning its floors and filling its basins. Beauty was no longer separate from cleanliness. It was born from it. In the workshops of painters, apprentices scrub their hands before touching pigment. The masters insist, a clean brush, a clean mind. And as they wash, the sound of water becomes part of creation. Every masterpiece begins with a rinsed hand and a bar of soap. Even science begins to listen. Scholars studying anatomy notice how washing instruments prevents decay. They cannot name bacteria yet, but they sense connection, that water preserves life even as it cleans. Some call it divine order, others call it nature. Both are right in their own way. At night, when the city grows quiet, the fountains remain awake. They are the sentinels of cleanliness. A poet walking home pauses by one, watching how moonlight turns the spray to silver dust. He writes later, "The fountain does not sleep that we may rest. It's a small truth wrapped in beauty." As centuries shift toward the 1500s, fountains grow grander. Rome's architects build them like sermons, water preaching grace in marble voices. In Florence, Botticelli paints Venus rising from the sea, her skin as luminous as soap bubbles in sunlight. Cleanliness has become not just physical but aesthetic, a new language of purity. And yet, amid all this grandeur, the essence remains humble. A basin, a jug, a hand cupping water. Civilization's height is still measured by the sound of a splash. Imagine one last evening in that age. The air smells of rain and lemon oil. In a small square, a fountain gurgles softly. A washerwoman finishes her work and sits by the edge, her feet in the cool water. She closes her eyes. The city hums faintly beyond. Horses, laughter, bells. But here, there is only peace. The water strokes her ankles, whispering secrets older than any empire. She thinks of her grandmother, who never dared bathe for fear of sickness. She thinks of her daughter, who now washes every morning without fear. And she smiles. The world, she realizes, has learned how to breathe again. The night deepens. Lamps flicker in windows. The washerwoman rises, dries her feet, and walks home through the scent of wet stone and soap. The fountain keeps singing after she's gone. The sound is steady, eternal. Somewhere far away, it merges with the sea. The same sea that will soon carry ships to new worlds, carrying soap, water, and the dream of cleanliness across oceans. And perhaps that's where we'll go next. Take another slow breath. Listen to the city's pulse, the quiet trickle, the echo of marble. In this age, water is no longer feared. It is loved. And through that love, civilization begins to shimmer with light. Let it lull you. The fountains murmur. The rain hushes the rooftops. And as your mind drifts, you can almost taste the air, clean, cool, infinite. Tomorrow, in our final chapter, we'll follow that sound home, to quiet rooms, candlelight, and the small bedtime rituals that close the story of medieval hygiene. The world has washed its hands. Now it will rest. Close your eyes and listen to the water breathe. Night has settled across the old world like a velvet shawl. The fountains hush, the markets sleep, and behind every shutter a candle burns low. You can almost smell the wax cooling, that faint sweetness that always marks the end of the day. Inside one quiet house on the edge of the city, a woman draws water for the night bath. The bucket creaks on the rope, and the water splashes into a copper tub with a sound so soft it feels like breathing. Steam rises, swirling around her face, catching the candlelight. The air smells of lavender, smoke, and soap, the trinity of comfort. Her husband sits nearby, mending a torn sleeve. Their little boy hums to himself, tracing circles in the steam with his finger. It is a moment so small, so ordinary, that history rarely remembers it. And yet, this not wars or kings is how the world truly changed. A family bathing without fear. She tests the temperature with her wrist, smiles, and pours in a ladle of perfumed oil. It ripples across the surface, glinting like gold. When she lowers herself into the water, it sighs around her shoulders. You can almost hear that sound, the soft rush of heat meeting skin, the faint crackle of the fire. Every worry of the day loosens, melts, drifts away. Through the open window, night air enters, cool, clean, carrying the faint scent of rain on stone. She closes her eyes. For a heartbeat, the centuries fade. She could be a monk washing before matins, or Isabeau stirring her cauldron, or a washerwoman rinsing linen at dawn. All of them one long chain of hands meeting water. Cleanliness has become inheritance, not commandment. Elsewhere in the city, lamps flicker along the river. A man empties his basin, watching the water shimmer down the gutter. A servant in a palace polishes the marble floor until her reflection smiles back. A student leans over his desk, rinsing his quill, the ink swirling into blue clouds. Everyone, in their own quiet way, performs the same ritual, washing away the day so that sleep may begin. It is the 15th century sliding gently into the 16th now. The Renaissance hums in the distance, science awakening, cities glowing. Yet inside each home the rhythm is still human and slow. Water, cloth, candle, breath. The same elements that have carried the world from darkness into clarity. Imagine walking through those streets one last time. The cobblestones are damp from evening rain. The smell of soap drifts from open windows. The faint music of lutes and laughter filters through the air. A cat darts past, tail high, silent as a shadow. Somewhere a church bell marks the hour. Not a warning now, but a lullaby. You pause beside a fountain. The moon glitters in its basin. The water moves lazily, whispering to itself. You dip your hands in, and it's cooler than you expect. For a moment, you see your reflection. Tired eyes, a face half in shadow, and then the ripples erase it. That's what washing has always been, you realize. A way to forget what hurts and begin again. A soft wind rises, tugging at your sleeve. From an upper window, someone pours out the remains of their bath. Clean water, fragrant, falling in silver drops. It splashes near your feet, and you laugh quietly. Even the waste of cleanliness feels pure. The world is asleep now. The great cities of Europe lie under blankets of cloud. In Florence, the fountains murmur to the stars. In London, hearth fires fade to embers. In Venice, the canals rock gently against the walls, carrying reflections of lanterns that look like drifting candles. Everywhere, water glows in pipes, in basins, in dreams. And somewhere, far inland, an old woman, Isabeau's great-granddaughter, stirs a pot for the last time that night. Her soap will dry by morning, ready for market. She hums the same song her ancestor once did. The melody is simple, circular, endless, like the motion of a hand dipping into water. That sound carries beyond her cottage, through fields and across rivers, folding itself into the whisper of fountains, the rustle of leaves, the hush of the sea. It becomes the planet's own breath, a reminder that all things wash clean in time. You can rest now. The story has come full circle, from fear to faith, from perfume to purity, from plague to peace. The medieval world, once shadowed by superstition, now sleeps in the comfort of clarity. Close your eyes and listen. A faint drip, a soft ripple, the sigh of cooling water. It is the last bath before dreams. The house has gone quiet now. The child sleeps, curled beneath a quilt that smells faintly of sun-dried linen. Outside, rain begins again. A light, whispering drizzle that taps against the shutters and slides down the roof in silver threads. The sound is steady and kind. She sits by the fading fire, hair damp from the bath, combing through the last tangles slowly. The comb makes a gentle rhythm, a hush and pull, hush and pull. With every stroke, the day loosens a little more. Ash settles in the hearth. Somewhere nearby a clock ticks like a heartbeat that refuses to hurry. On the table stands the basin from earlier, half full. The water has cooled to mirror stillness. In it, the candlelight trembles. Small ripples shimmer out each time the flame wavers. She watches them spread, thinking how every movement leaves a pattern, even if it vanishes a breath later. The basin smells faintly of soap, clean, neutral, human. A scent so simple it might have no name at all. Across the city, 100 other rooms glow the same way. Some richer, lined with marble. Some humbler, walls patched with lime. But everywhere, the ritual repeats. The wiping of hands, the rinsing of cups, the turning down of lamps. Cleanliness has become the final conversation of the day. Imagine the soundscape of it. A splash here, a sigh there. The low creak of a tub emptying. A window closing against the wind. Even the noises of water have become polite, softened by habit. Down by the river, a watchman walks his route. His boots brush puddles that gleam like broken mirrors. He pauses to listen. The water laps at the quay, quiet but alive. He thinks of how his father once feared this river, called it a carrier of illness. Now it brings the city both drink and song. He smiles, adjusts his cloak, and keeps walking. Upstream, near the old monastery, the bells ring once for the final prayer. Inside, only a handful of gray-robed brothers remain. They wash their hands at the basin just as their ancestors did centuries ago. The ritual hasn't changed, only the reason has. Once it was obedience, now it is gratitude. The eldest monk cups his palms, lets the water run through his fingers, and whispers, "Benedicite, blessed be." He dries his hands on a linen cloth, folds it carefully, and places it beside the basin. Then he extinguishes the lamp. Darkness folds around the chapel like a blanket. For a moment, there is nothing but the smell of damp stone and the faint trickle of water beyond the wall. The sound is so constant it might be silence disguised. In another quarter, a scholar sits at his desk, writing by candlelight. His fingers are ink-stained. His mind hums with theories of health and balance. He dips a rag in clean water, wipes the stains away, and watches the cloth turn blue. Even knowledge, he murmurs, needs washing. He laughs quietly at his own thought, sets down the pen, and blows out the flame. The night accepts him into its stillness. Outside the city, in the countryside, the rain thickens. It beats softly on fields newly plowed. Each droplet sinks into the soil, disappearing yet feeding something unseen. Streams fill, brooks swell, the land drinks deeply. Farther downhill, water gathers into the river that will reach the city by morning. The same river that filled basins and fountains now cleanses the earth itself. The cycle is endless, the great wash of the world. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it from your own room. That vast, slow rhythm of rain meeting river, river meeting sea. Sounds like sleep breathing. Back in the little house, the woman lifts her child and carries him to bed. She sets the candle on the floor so its light won't wake him, tucks the quilt beneath his chin, and smooths his hair. His skin smells of soap and milk and dreams. She bends down, kisses his forehead, and whispers, "Sleep clean, little one." Then she laughs at herself because who ever slept dirty? But it feels right to say. She leaves the door ajar so the firelight can wander in. When she returns to the hearth, the embers glow like eyes half closed. She pours the remaining bathwater onto the ashes. Steam rises, soft and sighing. The hiss is gentle, final, the sound of day extinguished. For a moment, the air smells of everything at once. Smoke, soap, wood, rain. The perfect recipe for rest. She sits, wraps a shawl around her shoulders, and watches the steam fade. Her hands rest on her knees. Her breathing slows to match the rain. Outside, thunder murmurs far away. Not anger, just conversation. The kind of thunder that seems to say all is washed, all is well, and you, listening, might feel it too. How history itself seems to exhale. All the fear, the filth, the superstition, rinsed away by centuries of patience. Every candle, every basin, every act of care a small ripple in the same stream. The medieval world is gone now, but its heartbeat lingers in the water that still runs through pipes beneath modern streets, in the taps that sing each morning, in the showers that fog our mirrors. Each drop is an echo, each lather a prayer without words. When you wash your hands tonight, you are touching their story. Isabeau's cauldron, the monks' basins, the fountains of Florence. The water that flows over your skin once rained on their rooftops. The same molecules, the same music, the same soft gift. Think of that as you drift. How every act of cleanliness is really a conversation across time. How every bedtime wash is a closing line in the poem of history. Now the candle burns low. The wick bends, curls, then straightens again. Light flickers across the wall, tracing slow gold shapes that could be angels or nothing at all. The room breathes. You breathe. The woman whispers one last prayer, simple and human. May tomorrow come fresh. The candle sighs out. Darkness settles, not heavy, but warm. Outside, the rain keeps falling, washing roofs, leaves, streets, dreams. Listen to it. Let it fill the quiet space behind your eyes. Each drop a heartbeat, each ripple a cradle. The story has reached its gentlest truth, that to be clean is to belong again to the world. You can rest now. Let the centuries dissolve. Let the water's memory hold you. Good night, traveler. Good night, listener. Good night, soul of history and rain. May these memories guide you into peaceful dreams. May your mind drift like water returning to the sea. And if this calm journey helped you rest, tap like and subscribe, only if it feels right. Until our next story, sleep deeply, sleep clean, sleep well.